Welcome back to the Next Level Sega fans. It's the podcast where we may talk about piracy, but this is not pirate radio. I'm Dan the Mega Driver, and here's the Fenrir to my Everdrive. It's James the SEGAHolic. How you doing, mate?
Well, Fenrir's a wolf, but I don't think people want to hear me howl, so I'll just say I'm very well, mate. First recording of the new year, so here we go. We've had our break. Not that people would notice because the amount of stuff we've been putting out with the deluge of Homebrew stuff, which will obviously take us nicely into the topic of today's show. But I'm very well, mate. How's yourself?
Very good, mate. Looking very sharp on the new camera with the new microphone, the new equipment. Looking great, to be honest. I've got to upgrade myself, I think. New camera, new microphone on my side, but it's good to be back behind the microphone, mate. And yeah, there's been a deluge of homebrew content and updates and mods and fan ports. And there was, I think we had 3 videos in a row trying to react to the daily announcements, and I think there's been another 3 or 4 since at the time. This isn't, people aren't going to see this for 4 weeks or whatever, but you know, we had Saturn Bomberman fight. We had oh god, my brain's going blank, but what was the one that was announced on the Shiro show?
Shadows of a Tusk.
That's
as
it,
well.
Yeah. It just doesn't stop, and it just shows how vibrant that Sega community is, which, you know, we're going to be touching on quite a lot today, because this is, I think, more than ever, and this is something that we talked about, is why it's absolutely essential these days as a retro gamer to have some sort of flash device, whether it's an ODE, whether it's an Everdrive. It just seems to be something that you can't live without these days, I would say.
Yeah, and I know obviously collecting is a big thing, and I know there's collectors, like, you know, I know you're not a collector per se, because I've always said that's just your stuff that you've accumulated, but you've got a massive physical collection, but you also have ODEs. But I think there's still an element of people in the community that maybe don't quite gravitate towards ODEs. Maybe they misunderstand them. Maybe they don't realise exactly all the benefits that are out there for them. So, you know, hopefully this episode is something that, you know, we can have a chat about. What is an ODE? What are the benefits? What are the pitfalls? You know, just stuff like that, just to kind of maybe hopefully educate and inform people who may be on the fence about opening up their console and putting one of these mods in. But as you'll discover as we go on, you don't have to open your console for all of them. So no. There's lots of options, and that's the good thing. There's so much to choose from. Absolutely,
mate. But for anyone that we'll start with the really basic stuff. You know, what is a flash device? What is an ODE? What is an Everdrive? I mean, the ODE we'll start with. That's probably the more complex one of them. But ODE obviously standing for optical drive emulator. And I think the simplest way to sum this one up is it replaces the disk drive in your console. And that could be your Sega Saturn disk drive or your Dreamcast disk drive. I don't think there's been one for the Mega CD yet, albeit there is another solution that we'll come on to in a minute. But I don't think there has been, has there?
Not that I'm aware of, no. I know, like, PS2 has got one that involves like a kind of a memory card as well exploit.
The Freemut boot.
Yeah. So there's options out there for all the consoles. Mega CD, I think, is probably the odd one out, you know, because we've obviously Everdrives that work on 32X and Mega Drive, but Mega CD or Sega CD is the kind of the odd one out. But the thing with optical drive emulators is there are some people who I've seen who, the minute they see the word emulator, they come back and say that you're still emulating the game, and people need to realise that for all intents and purposes, the machine does not know it's not reading a disc. So it's still the Saturn or the Dreamcast or Mega Drive in the case of a cartridge that is still reading the ROM, which would be on the cartridge or disc. What you are emulating is a piece of hardware. You're not emulating the game. You know, it's different to running like a Poly Mega or a Mister, where you are emulating physical hardware in its entirety. But with these ODEs, the only part of the emulation is you are emulating the disk drive. The Saturn and Dreamcast is still using its components to run these games as it would if there was a disk drive in there.
Yeah, and I think that's an important distinction to make, because as you say, mate, the only thing it's emulating is the fact that there is or would be a disk spinning in that drive, and it would be read, and that data transferred to the console. But once that data is transferred to the console, that's where the emulation stops. So It's still going through all the hardware, all the processors, as the Sega Saturn has 6 processors. The PlayStation only has 1. But
sorry, PlayStation.
But it's going through the processors, the GPUs, still going through the whole video out options, or however you've got it wired up. So you're basically still playing on with real hardware. The only caveat is you're not using the original disc or the original disc drive. And if you've ever used a CD-based console, I'm pretty sure you've probably had a disc read error, a failing disc drive. Sometimes the Saturn ones, they don't spin at all. And if you've got a Dreamcast, sometimes it's a little bit spooky because you don't hear the disc grinding noises, but that's okay.
Aye, the Dreamcast is the one that I think even more so, like PS2 had that thing where you watched the blue light on the left, and after you put a disc in, the lights were still moving, and you watched that blue light, and and as long as it tailed up and then shot off the top of the screen, you were fine. See, if that thing went left, you were gubbed. You knew you were getting the red screen. It was going to come up. So yeah, but the Dreamcast obviously gave you the kind of the telltale grunting noise that it was doing something. But even then, we've all had the famous "please insert game disc" that comes up with Dreamcast.
Boom.
And as Tom said when he was on the show, it's like you're sitting there shouting at it, going, "The disc is in, it's there. Read the damn thing." And I think with Dreamcast, I think it's probably the one that benefits the most, because for me, Dreamcast has still got the weakest hardware. I think all round Dreamcast has got the weakest hardware in general, but that GD-ROM drive is just so janky. It's so temperamental that I just think as a console that you want to keep enjoying going forward, you've got to think with how little of these machines are out there as well, in comparison to like a PS2, PS1, that all these machines are just getting cannibalized. Like how many people do we know who have got like multiple Dreamcasts that they use to take bits from? Like my Dreamcast is made up of 4.
Yeah.
Alone. Yeah, it's like, so these machines are getting cannibalized to basically repair one another. And at some point, the worry would be that down the line there's not going to be any parts left. So, using these options to keep these things going longer and more efficiently as well is brilliant.
It is, mate. So ODEs essentially a replacement part in most cases, not all cases, but in most cases, actually replacing the disk drive for your console. Everdrives, slightly different. So again, we're playing games from a flash card, SD card, but these take the form of just cartridges. So you'll take your cartridge, you'll put your games on it on the SD card. That SD card, rather than going in your ODE, goes to the top of the cartridge, which you just plug into your console. There you go. And we've got them for the Mega Drive, the Master System, and the Game Gear. The Mega Drive one actually handles 32X games. And quite interestingly, the latest Everdrive and Mega SD, I believe it's called, they actually run Mega CD games from them. So that's where your Mega CD ODE option comes in, albeit they're quite pricey. I think it's the Everdrive. I think it's the Everdrive Pro. It's called, but and we'll get onto some of the benefits of some of that stuff at the end. But one of the benefits of that one very early on in being able to run Mega CD games is you can effectively emulate Mega CD sound for Mega Drive games and enhance the audio. But we'll get onto the benefits soon. But yeah, we're both got Everdrives, haven't we, mate? You out of the two of us, you're the one that had the Game Gear one as well.
Yeah. I had a clone that I picked up, but Aye, it was interesting as well to see that it works exactly like the kind of the bigger ones on the Master System and the Mega Drive. It's literally just a list of games that you can split up into folders alphabetically by genre, however you want to arrange it. And you just go in and you just choose your game, and you'll see the little loading bar. So it erases the game that was on it before, and then you'll see a progress bar as it copies it onto memory, and then it loads up, and that game stays in the memory. If you hit the reset button, power off, back on, hit game start, that game stays there. So if you've got a favourite game that you just like to play over and over, if it's maybe an expensive one that physically you might not be able to afford or find, then you can put it on your Everdrive and just have it sitting there if you want. But it's a great option to have. It really is.
Yeah, and I think and it is options because, as you say, you mentioned that you had a clone. You can get clone devices. I think I've got an official Everdrive, an X5. I think you've got one of the clones, which is just as good. Has exactly the same functionality, does the same thing, plays exactly the same games. You've, as I say, we've got the Everdrive Pros and the Mega SDs. I think the SDs come from Terror Onion, and that goes back to ODEs as well. You've got, the Fenrir, which we're big champions of. I think we're in agreement that is pound for pound the best solution out there at the moment.
100%.
Now, obviously, the mode exists as well. The mode works on both Dreamcast and Sega Saturn. You can use it on either. Probably not both at the same time, unless you want to have both your consoles sitting there naked and switch your drive between the two. But that does give you a bit more functionality. You can actually hook up huge hard drives next to them.
Yeah.
If you don't want to get rid of your disk drive, you want to keep both. There's options for that. There's the satiator for the Sega Saturn, which plugs into the drive bay. And there was one of the very first SD card based solutions I saw, mate, and I don't know if this is one, I don't think it's very popular anymore. I know someone, James on Twitter, Why Always Jamesy, who sold me my 32X actually. He had a Dreamcast and it had an SD card slot in the side where the modem went.
Is that the USB GD-ROM?
It might be.
Possibly. That still replaces a disk drive.
Does it still replace the disk drive then?
Yeah, the USB GD-ROM that replaced the disk drive. But is that not it's a Dream Shell as well? There's that.
That rings a bell.
Yeah, because I know that's not as popular these days. The kind of GDMU aspect of things is really taken off. That's become, I think, the de facto kind of option for people. And funnily enough, is that the de facto option is probably there's more clones out there than the real thing when it comes to GDMU.
I don't think you can make them fast enough, can he?
Aye, well, the thing is, I don't know if Danoon has kind of gone underground, or I know we had a firmware update, the 5.20 a little while ago, that I kind of addressed the two bugs that happened with the 5.15s, where on the Skies of Arcadia intro, when you get to the end when that weird kind of grey silver bubbly looking thing flies through the air, that freezes and you just have to press start and you get to the title screen and off you go. That's it. And Resident Evil Code Veronica, it freezes at the Tiger Eyes puzzle. It doesn't load the menu whenever you change the jewel round and all that. It just doesn't work. But Derek Pascarella has patched Code to basically allow it to work on 5.15 firmware. So really, and I've said this to people as well, if you're going to buy a GDMU, don't, if seeing all of Skies of Arcadia's intro is really paramount to you, then by all means get the 5.20. But with Code Veronica being the only game which had a game-breaking bug, and that's been fixed, and given that you can find 5.15s cheaper than 5.20s, what are you spending the extra to get?
Yeah.
the last 10 seconds of Skies of Arcadia's intro, really. So, but some people want to have the most up to date, and obviously the clones can't be upgraded in terms of firmware. I think the 5.20 versions that are out now can be, but it's a very tricky workaround. It's not as easy as like Fenrir. You just put a config file on and stick it in and off it goes. It's quite complicated as well. So, aye. But GDEMU certainly has become Dreamcast's kind of de facto ODE choice, even if it is now primarily clones.
Yeah, I don't hear as many people using mode for Dreamcast as I do people using mode for Sega Saturn.
Yeah,
which is odd. Because Fenrir is it seems a lot more stable, I think, than GDEMU. It's definitely a lot more user friendly. You can just load them up in anything. Whereas GDEMU, you kind of have to go through the menu and everything to get your ROMs on.
the only time I've had any problems with Fenrir, and I see that some people kind of maybe back one horse over the other kind of thing, and it's all down to kind of personal preference, but anything that I've thrown at Fenrir has worked. Like if it's retail stuff that's out there and you know where to find we're not going to provide any links or downloads or anything like that, right? But they're easy to find. They're out there and they're in the proper format that they would be on the disc. So anything I've thrown at it, any region retail wise has worked fine. Where Fenrir has struggled with some aspects is some homebrew titles where it's a single bin and a single queue file. And Fenrir doesn't like that. It likes the bin files to be separate.
Yeah.
So again, Derek Pascarella, the guy's a legend, man, honestly. The work that he does. But I reached out to him after that X-Men demo, went out, and the guy within 10 minutes had a working build for Fenrir because he just split the bin file up and it worked fine. So that's the only thing where I've found that Fenrir has any kind of issues.
Yeah.
Is with some homebrew stuff. Not all of it, just some of it if it's in that single file configuration. But for me, I think Fenrir value for money wise is €105. Yeah, you do lose your disk drive, but if you're someone who wants to get into Sega Saturn and you find a cheap listed Saturn with a broken disk drive for parts, and you pick that up for, let's say, 50 quid, and you get €105, 100 quid for a Fenrir, that's your 150 quid, and you're still half the price of getting a satiator here.
Yeah.
It's a no-brainer for me. So, but at the same time, you don't want to go down that route of saying, this is the option you must buy. We say you should buy this. The best thing about all of this is that there's options. Yeah. You know, that's what I just love about it. And I think the Saturn being blessed with so many, you've also got the Saru as well.
Yeah.
The
cartridge one.
Yeah. So there's another option coming out now. But I was on Shiro a few weeks ago. I said in the comments on one of the Friday night shows, yeah, an ODE that relies on the weakest part of the Saturn's hardware. What could go wrong? But you would lose 4 megabyte RAM compatibility because I take it that's not going to be built into that cartridge. So
yeah, you got to imagine you would.
Yeah. So, but options are good. We love options.
Yeah, even Fenrir has the switcher, so you can keep.
Yes.
It still requires an external. It still requires an internal mod, but
one solder, one wire.
So there's options, but so there's options for flash drives, ODEs, flash cartridges. What you use them for? So you touched on it just now, mate. Getting retail games, and I think that's probably where we'll kind of touch on first of all. When it comes to these, I'm pretty sure both of us have got the entire Master System library, the entire Mega Drive library. I've got the entire 32X library on my Everdrive card. 3 generations of content onto one 8 gigabyte SD card. Are we advocating piracy? I think from a moral standpoint, you've got to look at the entire market these days. You know, secondhand gaming prices. You know, if you pay a seller, you know, what's Panzer Dragoon go for these days for the Sega Saturn? £550. You know, Yu Suzuki Gameworks. Good luck finding a copy of that and not paying under £500. And when you pay that money, is it going to Sega? Is Sega getting it? No. Absolutely not. So, you know, the sad thing about this is that gaming is in danger of losing its history. And what was it? There was that news article that came out recently that said 95% of video games from the past are unplayable or unpurchasable legally. And yes, piracy is illegal. Piracy is, you know, a moral grey area. But when you're picking up, and we'll get onto the real reason soon, but it's worth talking about the fact that you can play these libraries, you can play all these games, which, you know, if you're on a budget, which most of us are, they're unobtainable. And even if you have got money to burn, you're still waiting for some of these to appear in the wild. So this gives you an opportunity to play games that you might not otherwise get an opportunity to on real hardware.
Aye, and I think that's the key thing for me. These titles, these retro games are history. You know, I've used the term on here before that we were living history, we just didn't know it at the time. Everybody, future generations to come, should have the opportunity to play these games. Now, as you said, that article said, was it 95% of past
Something
games?
Like that,
yeah, that's criminal. Now, yes, piracy is wrong when it is hurting developers, publishers, hard-working people who put hundreds of hours into these games. I have not a single pang of guilt at, you know, putting Panzer Dragoon Saga on an SD card. I paid $38.99 for it back in the day. I sold it for $180 in 2008 and thought I had done well. I could not, even if I had 550, 600 quid to throw away on a copy of it, that to me doesn't represent value at all to buy that back for that price physically. And probably what the cardboard box might have a bit of dings in it, the flaps will be loose. You know, what kind of conditions it going to be in? Is Panzer Dragoon Saga a £600 game? No game is.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, to be able to go back and experience that again, thanks to Fenrir, thanks to Satiator, is a godsend. And you're getting these things at a fraction of the cost to pick. I mean, Panzer Dragoon Saga was the game that I used to basically sell the idea of Fenrir to my wife when I got the Saturn back. It was like, this is a game I had, look what it's worth now. I'm never going to be able to buy that. So I get this mod and I've got access to that and everything else. And the thing is, mate, these games are essentially abandonware.
Yeah.
Like, as you said, Team Andromeda's not going to see a penny of 600 quid that you pay a collector for Saga. It's going to go in somebody's grubby back pocket. And all it does is that person then goes away, says, I just sold my copy of Panzer Dragoon Saga for 600 quid. They tell people that are in their kind of community or circle of friends. It goes on Facebook groups, and boom, before you know it, the price starts to go up because there's now an acceptance that that's what it's worth. And it's like people go on eBay and they look at, like, I've got a mate who collects Lego, right? And he's got so many pieces, like the AT-AT Walkers, the big Millennium Falcon, like he's the Ghostbusters house, the Harry. The guy's got a room full of Lego, right? It's just mental. And he goes on eBay and he sees buy it nows for like the Millennium Falcon for like 400 quid, for example. And he goes, well, that's a 400 quid piece. And I'm like, but mate, look at how many have actually sold in the last 90 days for that. None. Yeah. How many times has that been relisted? And that's what annoys me, is that, and I'm getting off on a bit of a rant now, but that does annoy me, that people look at eBay and they use that as a barometer for value. and then somebody's daft enough to pay the money for it, and then that just kicks the whole thing off again. So yeah, we don't advocate piracy when it comes to like modern systems at all. You know, modern gaming, I think you've seen with the amount of layoffs that we've witnessed in various departments from various, you know, publishers and developers that have been shut down over the last 12, 14 months. It's not a good place to be. It's a hard place to be making modern games. I would never advocate or even attempt to pirate modern stuff, but Mega Drive, Saturn, Dreamcast stuff, I'm sorry, I've got absolutely, is, you know, my conscience is completely clear. I'm not hurting Sega. I'm not hurting AM2, AM3, Team Andromeda, Tantalus, you know, Treasure, any of these guys. They would not see a penny of anything you give a collector. So that's my take.
No,
That's
I agree, mate. I completely agree. My conscience is completely clear. And yeah, oh no, it's Alex did a video recently where his piracy is morally correct. I wouldn't go completely that far, although he did talk a lot about the fact that we get unfinished games and the fact that even on PC it's loaded with DRM always online. But the video game industry has a really, really bad preservation problem, and a lot of accounts and a lot of people and a lot of big names will point that at Xbox and say that Xbox has the worst preservation problem because Xbox doesn't have so many physical games. Hi-Fi Rush didn't get a physical release. The Xbox console has to be logged on every time that you open a new one or set up an account on it, otherwise you can't play your games. And yeah, maybe Xbox is affected a little bit more than most, but you know, there's accounts that go out there and chronicle what games are playable, and they say, well, not every game needs a day one update. Not every game is full of issues. Not every game has issues when you put in just a disc and don't update it. For me, the battle for preservation was completely lost the minute that the first game went out and couldn't be played without an update. The first game, you know, the fact that games like Cyberpunk, that Street Fighter 5 in its original form, Fallout 76, you know, there's loads out there. The minute that we got the first one of those, the battle was lost on preservation. And unfortunately, until the video game industry cleans up its act, piracy is preservation. Piracy is the only preservation we've got. You know, Nintendo aren't putting the entire NES library on their Switch Online service. They're picking and choosing, you know, half a dozen titles. Same with Sega on the Switch library. And, you know, pretty much all of the Sega's retro releases I've bought online. You know, I bought them and I own them. You know, the Sega Ages ones on Switch, they came out, they trickled out 2 or 3 of them, and then they gave up. We're not getting we're not getting a port of Power Drift now, are we? So, and that's the thing about a lot of this. And then the physical games themselves, they're not a crux, and I don't think they're the solution. They're not the solution, and I don't think they ever have been. They're more, you know, you can rely on a physical game to always be around to an extent. You know, you've got things like disc rot and everything, but for me, it's always been a distraction more than a solution, because it's like, well, I'm not going to buy it digitally because I'll get the physical version of the game and I'll be okay. But that doesn't preserve the game for anyone. That's not preservation at all. That's preservation for yourself, you know, and that's preservation or speculating. You know, people buy all this stuff from limited run games and get all these little trinkets, and if you enjoy getting that, that's fine. But that's not preservation. That's lining that company's pockets for a market that they're exploiting. And then it's as simple as that. Real preservation, unfortunately, is piracy. There's only one source for getting any game that's out there, and that's, you know, on ROM sites, unfortunately. So if you want to preserve gaming, until someone or a group of people, or we get the video game industry to recognize the history and recognize their heritage and start preserving, you know, their art form with a bit more tenacity, then this is the only outcome we've got. This is the only option, is to play ROMs however we play them, whether it's emulated or, as we're talking about right now, on ODEs or Everdrives, because, you know, most people aren't going to get a chance to play Panzer Dragoon Saga or Burning Rangers in its original form. Castlevania, for example, on the Sega Saturn, you know, Konami are completely stonewalled. They're not bothered about adding any of the Saturn exclusive content, whether it's the, you know, the speed shoes or the extra dungeons. You know, as much as criticism that Saturn port gets, it's got exclusive content in there, which would be welcome in like an updated version. But they don't do that. They don't put those 2 dungeons in the PSP version. Rather, they entirely change the dub, remove the soundtrack, so you don't have I Am in the Wind in them, and you end up with a lesser version as a result. So.
Aye.
Yeah, mate. For me, piracy is preservation, unfortunately. The industry has gotten itself into this situation where you can't play games as they were originally built. And the only way that you're going to be able to do that is via the good people that have backed up these games and are preserving them online. And that's where your ODEs are quite useful. And that's my rant over.
Well, that's the thing, mate. What you're talking about there about, and that takes us back on the ODEs is one point that, and I've spoke to Jason about this on WhatsApp, and he pointed out as well. And it's like all these people who go on and on about physical media, the importance of physical media, we have to preserve physical media. Not one of them mentions preserving the hardware.
Yeah, which is just as important.
Yes. It's all very well having physical media, and I do agree that physical media is worth saving and is worth preserving. But why aren't these people talking about preserving the hardware? Because if that dies, you ain't got shit to run that on. And there was a tweet by someone that I replied to from the Sega Guys account. And the tweet said, it was a picture, they quoted someone, and it was a couple of Xbox games, some PlayStation 1 games, and Japanese Saturn games. And the tweet says, this photo shows that physical media is as precious for our shared cultural heritage as books and paintings. I want to dedicate 2024 to celebrating this culture, to show that games aren't tech and that they, like those who play them, are designed to think, feel, and move. A lot of, hyperbole there. My reply to that was games aren't tech, but without tech, without tech, those who play them cannot do so. Championing physical media is the right thing to do, but the way the hardware required to use them is overlooked is concerning. There should be an equal focus on preserving the original hardware as well. And suffice to say, there was no response to that. But
yeah.
So that was just that was kind of a annoying. Games aren't tech. Well, they are because they require tech to run.
Yeah.
So
otherwise, what are they? They're just
coasters.
Yeah.
It's
that's the thing, as you know, mate. I'm a big proponent of physical media. Whenever I buy a new game, I always get the physical version where I can. Street Fighter 6, bought the physical version. Same with Zelda. Same with Super Mario Wonder that I bought this year. Same with Sonic Superstars. Would have bought a Like a Dragon Gaiden, but they didn't do one. But that's just where we are. I'm a big proponent of physical media, but I think there needs to be kind of an acceptance of the fact that isn't the be all and end all, and that isn't foolproof, and that isn't it requires original technology and functioning hardware to run. And at the end of the day, it's still got a shelf life. Discs can rot, cartridges can fail. So yeah, and at the end of the day, Sega don't seem interested in resurrecting a lot of these properties. As much as the new Sega announcements excite us, we haven't seen anything to say there's going to be a new Panzer Dragoon. The fact that it's all gone very quiet on the Panzer Dragoon Spire remake.
I think that's going to happen. That looks like that's dead in the water. That's been kind of rumbling on as a rumour for how many years now?
Well, the original came out a good 3 or 4 years ago. So, and that definitely, skewers any thought of Panzer Dragoon Saga getting a remake. So, the only way you're going to get to play these games is either with very, very deep pockets or via ISOs, ROMs, emulation, effectively. So, yeah, from a moral standpoint, it's morally grey. But I think you've got to counter your own morals against that of an industry which has got absolutely no interest in preserving its history or its culture.
Yeah.
And until it does, don't take money, never ever take money out of a developer's pocket. pirating modern games is wrong. But if you're talking about games that are either so rare that you almost never see them, or the games that are so expensive that you could never afford them, the only person's pocket you're hurting is the resellers. And I think they can probably live without it if they're sitting on a £500 game.
Aye. It's and it's sad to see as well. Like that breaks my heart whenever I see like copies of, again, to bring up Panzer Dragoon Saga as an example, sitting inside a plastic case on a shelf. It hurts to see that. That game deserves to be played. It deserves to have its music heard, to have its story told, to witness the brilliant battle mechanics, the dragon morphing mechanics, to let Edge take you on his journey. It deserves to be played. There's not that many copies out there. To see it treated like a 4-disc trading card entombed in a plastic shell is painful. And obviously, if that's what people want to do, that's their prerogative, it's their money. But that's not why games are made. They're made to be played. So, as I said before, everybody has the right as gamers to play these games. As you said, mate, the industry is showing no appetite to preserve its past, to preserve its heritage, its history. They're just leaving it. I mean, yeah, as you said, these new Sega announcements, we're excited by them. We're a bit miffed that there's no Saturn titles. Utsumi-san taking over as CEO of Sega of America and Europe. He's been announced recently. I noticed it on the Video Game Awards tweet about it. They mentioned that he helped launch the PlayStation in the US, and he also helped launch the Dreamcast. And I'm like, that explains the lack of Saturn love then. So yeah, there's, and the Saturn, I think, is the system that suffers the most because of this. Because, as we'll come on to the next kind of discussion we're going to have, which is the overwhelming benefits, the Saturn's just got a library that deserves to be explored, because my God, there is so much to it. We grew up with the UK library, later on started delving into the Japanese stuff, but we only touched the surface of the Japanese stuff whenever we've now got older, got ODEs, got access to these games. It's a treasure trove. It really is. It's an Aladdin's cave of Sega goodness that, just dive straight in.
Absolutely, mate. And I think, just coming back on one of the points there, and obviously there are collectors out there who will buy a game, and it's their prerogative if they want to buy a game that's in pristine condition, and be very careful with it. Coming back to the benefits of an ODE or a flash drive, you can let that game sit on the shelf and actually play an image of it. There's that benefit as well. I know for some of my games, are a lot of these I've had since I was younger. My Panzer Dragoon Saga is fine, but the case is a bit tatty. I think other ones as well don't always need a bit of encouragement, shall we say, for the disc to start reading them, because I've had these and they're well used. But for some of them that I think the discs are a bit unreliable. And even for some where I'm a little bit cautious about handling them, I can play them on the Everdrive. And that's another benefit as well. It preserves your collection. If you just want to put your Mega Everdrive in and not keep putting your carts in and out of the slot,
wear and tear on your machine. Yep.
Yeah, you can just leave your Everdrive in there. Again, that's kind of what I do with my Everdrive. Just leave it in there and play the games that I want to. I can put my original carts in if I want, but again, it comes down to the fact that you've got options to do that. So if you want to play the whole library, and you agree with myself and James, and just want to download everything because no one else is going to preserve this history, fine. If you don't want to download all the games, but you do want to get a backup of all the games that you do own, that's fine as well. So as far as playing the original games, there's options there, and even if you're just going to play what you already own, but you don't want to preserve your hardware, that's absolutely fine as well.
And what you come back to there as well, mate, is another benefit of ODEs: convenience. You know, like what you said there. Yeah, collectors who don't want to continually take their cases off a shelf, open them up, run the discs potentially. You know, we're all clumsy buggers. You know, we've all dropped stuff and smashed it. You know, so if you've got stuff on your shelves that you don't want to continually take on and off, open up, load them up, put wear and tear on them, like cartridges, as you said, in and out with Mega Drive and Master System cartridges, you know, have your collection sitting there and just let the ROMs do the work.
Yeah.
And then you also avoid that kind of piracy because you can go, they're backups of my originals.
I know you've got a few physical games, even though you haven't got a CD drive for your Sega Saturn. You've got the big three, and you've got bootleg sampler on the way, haven't you?
Oh mate, don't. That's just. I literally argued with myself buying that because like there's a video that might have went out by the time this goes out.
Yeah,
I'm not sure it should have been. And I said, I says to you, I wanted to do two videos, a video on the big three and a video on the bootleg sampler, the first Sega Saturn demo disc, which came with the PAL and US consoles at launch, and then came on issue 3 of Sega Saturn magazine. And I just had so many memories, amazing memories of playing that demo disc, and I wanted to do a video on it. And I went on eBay on the off chance to look for it, and there's a copy there for $7.50 plus like £1.20 postage or something. It's in acceptable condition. There's a couple of scratches on the discs and a wee bit of wear, but it looks, for its age, it looks acceptable for what it's going to do, which here comes the hypocrite. It's going to sit on a shelf, right? you just said don't have stuff sitting on a shelf, but I was making this video and I'm recording the voiceover for it, and I'm getting into facts about like what World Series baseball was called in Japan, you know, Hideo Nomo World Series baseball, getting into the facts about it, and I'm writing this up and I'm recording it and I'm editing the footage and I'm listening to the music and I'm sitting going, oh, my heart, it's like I need to own this. and I seen it and I'm sitting going, it was like the devil and the angel. It was like, you don't have a disc drive, but I used to have it when I was a kid. Do you really want it? And I was like, and it sat there for 3 days. I was editing the video, and every time I edited the video, I got the pangs that I wanted to have it. And I would stop editing and go away, and I would come back and I would have a peek, and it was still there. And then after uploading the video and watching it back to kind of proof it to make sure there was no errors or anything, I went, to hell with it. And I bought it. So the seller's away until the 12th, it said on eBay. So I'm not in a rush for it, but it was just something that I wanted to, because the physical games that I've got are games that have got kind of like personal meaning to me. Virtua Fighter was gifted to me by Retro Prime very kindly after I helped him with his GDMU and Fenrir. So he gifted me that because he knew kind of what that game meant to me from listening to the pod and stuff like that. So I'm very grateful to him for that. Got my copy of SEGAHolic there as well. Got Virtua Fighter 2. So there's just games that resonate, you know. But that is one thing about the ODEs. It does give you that convenience if you don't want to keep messing about. And those Saturn PAL cases, mate, they are flimsy, you know. So
so the Dreamcast ones.
Oh, mate, you just need to look at a Dreamcast PAL case that cracks. It's like, please. It's like Samuel L. Jackson in Unbreakable.
Mr. Glass.
They call me Mr. Glass. It's like this break, but so bootleg samplers on its way, mate.
Yeah, but then so we've touched on why you'd want to play official games on your flash device. You know, backing up what you've got already, accessing games that you could never play. But mate, let's get into the real reason why you want a flash device, and that is the absolutely exquisite Sega homebrew scene. You know, we've already talked about Darren Pascarella and the sort of work that he does, but there are so many legends out there that are doing absolutely phenomenal work. If anyone's been paying attention to this channel, You've probably seen quite a few homebrew videos out there, whether it's translations, or you've already mentioned that the Japanese library that we never got over here in the West. Obviously, some of those, you play X-Men versus Street Fighter, we imported that back in the day. Easy as pie. You want to play Ogre Battle, well, that's going to be a completely different, different kettle of fish. But thanks to the homebrew community, now you can. Want to play the Saturn version of Vandal Hearts? There it is, fully playable in English.
Brilliant.
But what about Castlevania Symphony of Night? That plays worse on the Sega Saturn. Well, guess what? There's a mod for that as well. Improves the load times, improves some of the sprites.
You get a mod. You get a mod. You get a mod.
And then, make the X-Men arcade. Who was asking for X-Men arcade on the Sega Saturn? No one. Did we know we wanted it? No. But there it is, and we love it. So,
it's brilliant.
It's just it's absolutely endless what you can see on here. And this is stuff that you cannot buy, that you cannot get out there, that doesn't exist and wouldn't exist if it wasn't for this community.
No, it's unbelievable. And if I think back to I joined this community like in 2019, obviously not long after that, you and I kind of met on Twitter and stuff like that, but there was nothing to this level. Like, this is just the people that are coming kind of to the fore and, working on this stuff. Even Frogbull with these kind of Metal Gear Solid, Final Fantasy VII demos, that's just insane work. The translation stuff, the homebrew stuff, like the views that we've had on the X-Men video, the 32X Tomb Raider video, and the Castlevania mod show that there is an insane appetite for these mods that, they can be played on emulators, but they're also a brilliant way for you, to a real reason to get an ODE or a flash card and Everdrive for the also the Mega Drive stuff, like Mauro Xavier's Final Fight MD. There's a new build of that coming out in any day now, which has got even more added to it. Yeah. It's just, you've got Robo Z's Mega R-Type.
Yeah.
I'm actually struggling to keep up with what's happening. I mean, there was the Shiro show last Friday. Dave and Pat said, and Danthrax had said, please stay on the chat, on the stream, whenever the credits roll, we've got a special announcement. And it was Shadows of the Tusk in English.
Yeah.
Now, apparently the multiplayer part has already been put into English, but the single player part wasn't. The single player part's work in progress. It's happening. And I'm like, again, you had Stellar Assault SS, you had Bulk Slash.
Yeah, which Danthrax worked on, didn't he? He worked on Bulk Slash, which,
honestly, it's just
amazing stuff. And the thing with Stellar Assault and Bulk Slash, you'd think, okay, the translation teams will go out there, they'll just, where all the written text is in Japanese, they'll translate that. So you've got a nice subtitled version of the game, but in their good old Steve Austin way, no, they'll get a crew to completely redub the whole thing.
Yep.
Absolutely astonishing work, and just seeing people deliver stuff like that, and this is production level quality. This is almost beyond what working designs would do back in the day. It's absolutely phenomenal stuff.
Aye, and whenever you listen to like the audio, as you said, that the quality of like the voiceover work, it doesn't, like, if you and I try to do voiceover work, we'd end up sounding like bad parodies of Peter Weller and Peter Cullen and Frank Welker. Like, it just turned into a complete comedy act. But these guys sound like they were hired, like, professionally. Probably were, but you know what I mean. But back in the day, they would be like bona fide voice artists. Like, they don't sound cheesy. They don't sound overly done. Doesn't sound forced. It just sounds proper. Like, what if a real professional localized version of those games would sound like? They're absolutely phenomenal.
Oh yeah, I think they're better than what you'd hear back in the day. I mean, they're definitely above Deep Fear, isn't it? Evil sort of levels, but even
they're better than Shenmue, mate. That's for sure.
They are. It's amazing. So
one day I was Chinese.
Yeah. What was I was playing Deep Fear the other day, and I've been playing Deep Fear a lot lately, and Deep Fear is another one. I've actually got the Japanese version of Deep Fear. Played the PAL version with a friend. I've never completed it on my own, but played the PAL version with a friend back in the day. He sold it for about 10 or 20 quid. Obviously, Command's £300 now.
That
Now,
Del
on one
Bosque
hand,
gif into it.
yeah, oof. On one hand, I've got the Japanese version now. I've tried playing through multiple times, and it does get a bit challenging. It's not impossible, but I haven't quite had the patience to see it all the way through to the end with the Japanese language. Fine. Then you could get the PAL version. If you buy that, it's £300-400. You could put the PAL version on an ODE. But wait, you could actually just download the unreleased American version, and then all of a sudden you've got the best English version of the game, which never actually came out.
No.
So, and that's another thing, mate. You've got your mods, your homebrew, and your translations. And yeah, I mean, so much stuff here. I had a list on here, which we'll probably revisit in a bit, but I just wanted to talk about the prototype scene. And again, comes back to your bootleg sampler video where you talk about the Sega Rally prototype.
Yeah.
Without the squished Toyota Celica. Just trying to think when this will come out. By this time, we might have a Sonic the Hedgehog 3 video came out, and I'm using prototype footage from that. Again, been able to capture that from real Mega Drive hardware, thanks to an Everdrive, thanks to a flash card. So, and that gives us an insight into the games that never were. Deep Fear never came out in the US, but that US version exists. That original version of Sega Rally, where all the tracks are playable and the graphics look interestingly different. Sonic 3 with the Sonic 2 sprites. And there's so many more. The Super Star Wars port that never came out for the Mega Drive. I'm trying to think of others that came up, but there's so many. It's absolutely mind-boggling. Half-Life is a huge one. Half-Life on the Dreamcast.
Yes.
Basically finished. A few frame rate issues, but it was done. It was ready to come out, but the Dreamcast was no longer supported. That whole game is playable on Dreamcast. So
and it's been modded by the guys on Dreamcast Talk to improve performance and reduce load times. Like the threads that are on there, like they're such high level, like so. Like it's scary how smart these guys are.
Yeah, I know.
Like they go in and they explain that they've went in and they've found this bit of code and they've changed this number to that number, and they've changed how it reads into memory, and that it shaves a couple of seconds off each load time. And if they replace the models with the models from that version, then it runs better. And I'm like, how have you figured this out?
Yeah,
but the people that we've got in the community that are doing this stuff, we have to be so thankful to them, honestly.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, by the same token, I was reading through Frogball's Patreon earlier, and obviously he'd done the Final Fantasy VII demo. There's no ROM for that yet, but you imagine, one day there may be. Same for Metal Gear Solid, and that'd be amazing if there was. But yeah, the knowledge behind these guys. Some guy was saying, if you've done some sort of, and I'm putting it in a layman version. The talk was very high level, and it was like all this talk about perspective correction and using these sort of techniques, which I can't remember off the top of my head, and I probably struggled to pronounce them. But these guys are so intelligent and so talented, and the fact that they're focusing on this Sega stuff is just, we're so lucky to have them. We had Unreal on the Sega Saturn. We've got Final Fight on the Mega Drive, again pushing the hardware. There's all sorts of stuff like the Doom 32X, is it Doom Resurrected? Really showing, really pushing the hardware. It's full screen, it runs faster, it has all the levels from the original game, and you can even add CD soundtracks. So if you've got a Mega Everdrive Pro or a Mega SD, you can pretend you can emulate it having a Mega CD attached and have a CD soundtrack to it. It's absolutely mind-boggling. And even there's competitions for some of these. So the Master System Game Gear SG-1000, SMS Power run a annual competition. And there's so many prototypes and stunning games on there that it's mind-blowing. So yeah, it may be that the Dreamcast is obviously the youngest of that entire family, so maybe its time will come.
Well, to be fair, the one thing that has come out that was impressive was the Atomus Wave stuff.
Yeah.
So
No,
that was impressive. That they've managed to get those games to run, on obviously a GDMU. But I would just like to see the Dreamcast get its muscles flexed a wee bit. It would
you
be
just want
nice.
Scud Race. That's all you want.
I know. See whoever. If anybody ports anything remotely playable to do with Scud Race on that, I will bow at their feet. I will throw money at them. Just thanks.
Yeah. If you're working on it, tell us your Patreon details and we'll fling you over a few quid. As much as we can.
A couple of bungs. That's it. Watch this. We're getting scam requests now. I'm making Scud Race. Give me money.
Yeah. But mate, there's but whether it's Dreamcast, whatever Sega console, Dreamcast, Saturn, Game Gear, Master System, Mega Drive, and as I say, Mega CD as a byproduct of that 32X. Again, the fact that they've got a build of Open Lara running and looking as good as it does.
Mental.
Again, interesting because I think that's going to have to be one that probably emulates it being on a Sega 32X with a Mega CD attached. Because like Sega Lord X was saying in his coverage of that video, the ROM size is already something like 16 megabit.
Jeez.
Just for one level.
And just for one level. Wow. Jeez, so this what size is that going to be? Because that's the thing as well. A lot of folk have said in the replies to the X-Men video we did that where can I play this physically, or it's a shame that license issues mean we won't get to play this physically. And I think the inevitability is that these games, if they are ever finished, will likely find their way onto an Etsy or an AliExpress in the form of a reproduction.
Yeah.
There's tons of them out there already, whether it's for retail games or homebrew stuff. Someone already, it's not for sale, but they made a brilliant repro of the Mega R-Type using the arcade's poster art, and it looks absolutely beautiful. The sticker on, they put the ROM onto a cartridge and they had the sticker on it. They made a manual and everything. Is beautiful. So there will be people out there that when these come out, once it gets out in the wild, there's no stopping people from doing what they want with it. And I think that's why Frogbull won't release the work that he's doing just now for Metal Gear Solid and Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah.
I doubt he'll ever finish them because they're just far too big. He's one guy. What he's done already is ridiculous. It's insane. But I think he knows that if they got out there, someone would take advantage of it, make a case up, and probably sell it, and make money off it. And as I say, I've reached out to him. I speak to him in DMs, spoke to him a few times, and I've said if he ever wants to send us, if he ever gets a build that's Fenrir or ODE friendly to try it out and give opinions on it, we're here. We'd never share it. It would never leave our possession. We're honourable that way. We would never stab somebody in the back and release something that was given to us in kind of good faith. But hopefully we do, because it would be amazing to control Solid Snake on the Saturn. And I know someone replied in the comments as well saying that Metal Gear Solid was on Dreamcast through Bleem. And I'm like, aye, okay, that's a loophole and a half, right? That's a bit different than a port for the actual. It was still a PlayStation disc that was being manipulated. This is actually being built to run on, albeit at present, emulated Sega Saturn hardware.
Yeah, and I think, and that's the thing about the Everdrives, is that you are getting to play it on, it's great getting to play it on an emulator, and hopefully via an Everdrive you get to play it on real hardware, because I think and it becomes a lot more real then. I've got a PC and I've got all sorts of emulators on there. I mainly play MAME on there now. it's just nice to have the real hardware, and there's just something magical about playing these games on real hardware. There's all sorts of. I used to play Final Fantasy V translation for the Super Nintendo. I know we're changing to a Nintendo now, but I used to play the Final Fantasy V translation on the SNES. That was one of the earliest translations I'd ever played. I played that emulated, but I didn't play it much. But this just feels more real playing it on the real hardware, and it's the same for it. It applies to all these Mega Drive games, these Sega games. Grandia. I finally finished Grandia last year. 60 hours, loved every minute of it, and I've had the physical version in Japanese for ages. Tried playing through that with a translation, too difficult. Trying to place I got the PlayStation 1 version. It's a bit pants, so I didn't really get far in there. But you're playing it as it's meant to be played, but in a way that it's accessible for you. And there's so many. I mean, the list that I've got on here, mate. Grandia is a favourite of mine. It's the Castlevania mod. Luna the Silver Star is a great one. Again, they've updated the FMV in there with the subtitles. The Shining Force 3 trilogy, the fact that we didn't get scenarios 2 and 3, and the fact that not only did the community go out there and they translated scenarios 2 and scenario 3 and that final bonus disc, but they went back and retranslated the original one so that the changes done to keep it as a kind of standalone release in the West are undone, so it links into the rest of the trilogy more.
Brilliant.
We talked about Bulk Slash, Stellar Assault, Vandal Hearts, Rent a Hero on the Dreamcast, Sakura Wars getting translations on the Saturn and the Dreamcast, Space Channel 5 Part 2, Golden Axe on the 32X. There's so many, and it's absolutely mind-boggling. I mean, yes, you could play these emulated, but there's something special about playing them with real hardware, especially if you stick them like a CRT. It's like the world that should have been.
I mean, another one to add to that list as well is Dragon Force 2.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely brilliant. But you're right. There is, again, it all comes down to options. There's people who, again, like Polymegas are popular, Misters, PCs running, is it Medifen as well, the emulator for Saturn as well, if you want to run any of those. That's fine, but I was talking speaking to Jason earlier on about preservation. And he'd mentioned about, the convenience of ODEs and about PCs loaded with ROMs up, and I'd replied and said, for me, I'd struggle this is going to sound really daft, but I would struggle to enjoy Sega Saturn games on anything but a Sega Saturn, and it's just because it's there. There's that emotional attachment to it. Now, people might go, that's just romantic, nostalgic nonsense, but knowing the history of that system, that specific Saturn that's sitting there, there's just so much attachment to that I've got, that it's just magical. See, just like turning it on and knowing that I pressed that power button when I was 16 years old. Like I opened that lid, that disk tray when I was 16 years old, and here I am. I'll be 45 in May, and it's still there. And now it's been improved, to run everything that I had before and that I could ever have wanted since. It's just a magical time, and you'll probably be the same way. The likes of like your Master System, your Mega Drive, Saturn as well. These are just systems that you've got attachments to, and even that Mega Drive that you sent me, mate. Like, just playing Sonic on that feels better than playing Sonic on like the Xbox 360 version, which was pretty poor emulation, or even the iOS versions. Like, sit and playing it on a phone. Christian Whitehead's work's amazing, but just sitting there playing it on a real Mega Drive, there's just something about it that is just special. So, but again, there's no right way, there's no wrong way. Options are brilliant. If we all liked the same and thought the same, it'd be a pretty bloody boring place. But the thing that we've got to be grateful for is that we have got so many options now, a plethora of options on ways to experience these games.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And this is mainly going to be appealing for people that enjoy playing on real hardware, because at the end of the day, you've got that tactile feel of the original controller, the original display options. You may want to plug it into, a Rad2X or whatever and get it on an LCD, and that works as well. You still get that original feel for it, look like you do, mate. You still got to get that original feel even look hooked up to a modern display. But I think most people who enjoy playing on the legacy hardware, they really should be looking at getting an ODE, whether it's to play the original games that they couldn't play in the past, can't find or can't afford now, whether they just want to back up their existing collection, or whether it's just to sample the absolute treasure trove of new translations and new titles, homebrew games, mods. If you wanna play the translated version of Streets of Rage 3, there you go. If you want to play Streets of Rage 3 with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in, you can do that as well if you want to. If you want to play Streets of Rage 3 with Homer Simpson, well, there you go. There's a mod for that as well. So
That's it, mate. There's just endless stuff being done, but it's the homebrew and the mod scene is becoming almost as important, if not more important, than the actual playing of original games, because it's opening up a whole new community, a whole new possibility, new games that you never thought you would play before. I mean, I've come April, excuse me, I'll have had my Fenrir for 4 years now, and that's flown in that, by the way. But 4 years ago, when I got the Fenrir, there was nothing like this. That was 2020. There was nothing. What we have seen in terms of growth in the community is frightening, and it's pretty scary to think, what's the next 12, 24 months going to bring? What else are we going to see? It's exciting. It really is.
I think 2024 is going to be insane for some of these mods. But I think the thing is, mate, I mean, I do play modern consoles, but I keep finding myself coming back to my older ones. I think if you just had Sega hardware and you didn't want to buy another console again, I think you're well catered for. As I say, there's these new Master System games coming out on an annual basis. There's new mods, new homebrew solutions for new homebrew games for the Mega Drive, 32X, Sega Saturn, Dreamcast. We're getting new stuff every day. You could just stick to your old Sega hardware and you would not run out of things to play.
That's me. I've no interest in going back to modern gaming at all. And people will be like, "Go get yourself a gamer." And I call myself I am a retro gamer. I don't play since I got rid of my Series X, probably 2 years ago almost. No, about 18 months. Mainly because I just didn't play it. I don't have the time to invest in modern games, unfortunately. As I say, just life has changed. I just don't have the 70 hours that I did before to sink into Assassin's Creed Origins. It's like the Division I played from beta all the way through, all 3 expansion packs. I bought the season pass. I played that game every night with the same 4 guys from Wales, believe it or not. One was from Yorkshire, a couple from Wales. And we basically learned that game, progressed through that game, got stronger in that game together. And when I think back to how much time I invested in it, I couldn't do that now. So the whole thing about, installing games and downloading patches, and it's just, I just fell away from it big time. I just love going in, firing up the Saturn, the Dreamcast, the Mega Drive. If I want to have a quick shot of Crazy Taxi, Sega Rally, BF2, have a run on nights and try and get all the A's across the board, try and paraloop Gilwing in one go because he's a dirty rotten sod, then I can do it. And it's not, I get that kind of buzz, that hit from enjoying that classic Sega gameplay. And then I can go on with my day until I can come back to it again. So just it's horses for courses, but I don't miss having a modern console because I'm now so invested in not just gameplay wise for myself, but for the channel. It's just keeping up to date, you know, like we did last week between you and I, 3 videos in 4 days.
Yeah.
You know, we're just so invested in that. It's an ecosystem unto itself now. It's becoming its own kind of entity within the community. So
yeah,
aye, mate, brilliant.
Yeah, yeah. You could play, you know, Grandia. As I say, that was 50 hours. Luna is about the same time. Luna Silver starting. You've got a Luna Eternal Blue, which I think translation is in progress. A lot of the, you know, Ogre Battle is a long game. Shining Force 3 is 40 hours per game. You know, you are not short of things to play. But I think that leads us up nicely, mate. You know, you can play the classics, you can play these new games, you can play the new translations. The world's your oyster with these things. So if you haven't got an ODE and you're on the fence, but you like playing on the hardware, you have to get one. You know, and there's options out there to suit every sort of situation and appetite. So absolutely fill your boots with the best that this Sega has to offer, both old and new.
Yeah, and don't forget, I mean, if you're wanting any advice or help or pointed in the right direction for anything, you know, drop myself or Dan a message, or drop the pod account a message, and either of us will pick it up. You know, I'm into double figures now for the amount of people that I've helped set these things up. I've even set several up for the one person. So you know who you are. But I don't mind doing it. You know, it's great that people are exploring the options and want to delve into not just the current library, or you know, with the homebrew stuff, but the past library, the Japanese library. It's brilliant. So again, please, any questions, if you want to get pointed in the right direction, we are here to help.
Absolutely, mate, and we'll leave it there. But yeah, if you have any questions at all around ODEs, if you want any help, and reach out, let us know what your solution is or what your thoughts are. What are your favorite ROM hacks? What are your favorite homebrew games? Your favorite fan ports? Let us know. You know, whether it's in the comments below. You can reach out to us on X. You can find me at super_D. You can find James at the SEGAHolic, and you can find the account at Sega Guys. You can join our Discord. We've got a community in there. Frequently chatting about a variety of topics across all the Sega consoles. And if you like what we do, subscribe, and maybe even think about becoming a member, which you can do from as little as just 99p. And as always, a big shout out to our premium members. James, if you would like to give those guys a shout out.
Certainly, I am Mikowski, Stiff Peaks, G-Man, Sega Saturn Lad, and of course, Andy Mackey, our premium members. Thank you to all our members and all our subscribers. As I say, we, over the festive period, now over 3,000 of you and growing. So thank you very much to all our members and subscribers for your support.
And if you aren't a member or a subscriber, thank you so much for watching. You will find us next time, but until then, we'll see you on the Sega side.
Sega!